Welcome back, everybody. So one thing I was kind of wanting to talk about today is some things that I don't necessarily like about the KLR 650. So along with that, there are, a couple things that, a couple of the limitations of the KLR that are good to be aware of. So again, for me, KLR, absolute perfect fit for what I do and what I want to use it for. Some things that are definitely useful, some of the limitations of the KLR that are useful to be aware of. Since this one's pretty fresh in my mind, I'll start with it first. Is the oil drain plug on the bottom of the engine is a gigantic bulky thing that is just looking for a rock to come up and hit it and break your engine case. I would highly recommend, even if you have any suspicion that you're going to be doing any kind of off-roading with this thing, where you might get into even a road like this, it might have a rock on it you might accidentally come up on and hit. Put a skid plate on this sucker, just in case. That was me. I was that guy. I swore up and down that I would never do the kind of riding where that would even be a possibility. And sure enough, my last trip out last weekend, there were a couple very small, like 3-4 inch ledges that I was going down, and bottomed out the rock right smack in the middle of the case of the engine. Hit the drain plug, knocked it off. Limped the bike back. Had pretty much no oil when I got back. Fortunately, was able to save the engine. There was a little bit of damage to the exhaust camshaft and journals, but I was able to repair that. But I did have to replace the case on it, which was not a fun proposition. And with all the trips that I have planning up, I had to repair that in a week's time frame. I was able to do it because here we are. This is our first day out with the after we recase the engine. But yeah, not a fun situation all the way around. It was a lot of work and a lot of scrambling to get parts here in time. And it's the middle of summer in Phoenix, Arizona, and working in 100+ degree heat with all the humidity we've had recently. Not a whole lot of fun. So yeah, moral of the story, put a skid plate on your KLR. You will thank me later. Alright, another thing that's kind of a limitation of the KLR is the weight. They say this thing weighs in the neighborhood of like 400 pounds dry, something like that. Yeah, that's a bald-faced lie. I haven't put this thing on a scale, but I have a Suzuki GS500, which supposedly is within like 10 or 15 pounds of this thing weight-wise, and this thing feels like a tank compared to the GS500. Yeah, this thing has some serious weight to it, which kind of leads us into the next thing. The seat height on this thing is pretty tall. That took me a little bit of getting used to. Fortunately, now that I'm used to it, it's not an issue. But if your first experience with the KLR is not having the longest of inseams and hopping on here, you're going to drop this sucker a lot. And that's exactly what I did. I've since lost count. Never really took count anyway, but had I taken count, I'm probably well over 30 times having dropped this thing. And that's definitely due to the tall seat height and the weight of the bike. So definitely something to keep in mind if you're thinking about picking one of these guys up. And third thing that I've noticed, so I picked this bike up, and I got a really good deal on the bike, but the previous owner had taken a lot of the stuff off of it. Didn't have any fairings. He had put some different fenders on, Just kind of this, that, and the other. It's missing the pegs for the pillion passenger. Just little odds and ends. And even in the used market right now, things are fairly expensive for this thing. I was really surprised. Like the luggage rack, I spent about $75 finding a luggage rack for it. Rear fender, wanted to go with the stock rear fender so I can get my license plate on there and have all the lighting and everything. And that was a little over $100. And like all the other fairings, so there is a company out there, I think 3D Cycle is where I found them, but they do a complete fairing kit, or plastic kit I should say. It's fairings, fenders front and rear, cowling in the front, all the fun stuff. That's about $500. It's actually a really good deal because everywhere I've looked online, like I want to put a cowling on this thing, at front headlight cowling at some point in time on here, and they're about $125 used and usually damaged and faded and just in terrible condition. $125, and the 3D Cycle, their repop of it is about $125. So that is an option, but again, you know, just the parts. The parts can be expensive. Let's see, when I recased the engine, I was able to find a case, both sides, for about $200. I was thinking about going the route of just replacing the whole engine and transmission assembly, but those are, you know, for something that looked like it would be worth putting in is at least $1,500 and north of there. Which again, yeah, I purchased a motorcycle for under $1,000, so that's a pretty tough pill to swallow. But yeah, so cost of parts can be a little expensive. Outside of that, just regular maintenance stuff has actually been fairly decent. You know, chains are what they are, oil filters are what they are, air filters, all that fun stuff. And I think the last thing that I really kind of have a bit of a gripe with the KLR, and this is only with respect to the off-road capability, is it's a love-hate relationship with the suspension. The suspension is just an absolute dream, like going through this stuff and washboard roads and soaking up all the little stuff. And of course on the street it is just fantastic. You start to get in a little more aggressive riding, and the suspension is just a little bit too compliant. So yeah, if you are thinking about doing a little more aggressive off-road riding with this thing, you know, the possibility of having some potentially expensive suspension work to make this thing function like you want to is something to look out for. All right, well, looks like we're maybe coming up on another turn here. Figure out where we want to go from here. So yeah, I think this is a good place to end it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks again for coming along for the ride.